Top stories in our news. The High Court has restrained opposition PF acting president Given Lubinda and acting secretary general Nixon Chilangwa from holding their positions indefinitely. Gears Initiative Zambia has urged the government to hold a referendum on the Bill of Rights between 2023 and 2024, and the Zambia police recorded over 10,000 gender-based violence cases in the fourth quarter of 2022. The Lusaka High Court has restrained Patriotic Front acting president Given Lubinda and acting secretary general Nixon Chilangwa from holding their positions indefinitely. The court has further reversed the suspension of Patriotic Front PF member of the Central Committee, Miles Sampa. High Court Judge Timothy Katenekwa delivered the verdict following an application for an ex parte injunction filed by Mr. Sampa to challenge his suspension. Judge Katenekwa on Thursday granted Mr. Sampa an interim injunction holding his suspension pending hearing of the matter. Earlier on Friday, PF chairperson for Information and Publicity, Raphael Nakachinda, had said the party will respect the interim injunction granted to Mr. Sampa against his suspension. Speaking at a media briefing, Mr. Nakachinda says his party will also abide by the court's decision to restrain PF acting president Given Lubinda and acting secretary general Nixon Chilangwa from holding themselves in those positions until final determination of the lawsuit against them. Mr. Nakachinda said the injunction will not derail the party from holding the General Conference slated for March 2023.
An injunction basically, was speaking to two things. The injunction, from what we hear, speaks to the fact that he wanted the court to reverse his suspension, and further that the vice president should not act as president, and the deputy secretary general should not act as the secretary general. Actually, it goes further. If what you hear is correct or read was correct, there is an attempt to try and reinstate Honorable Davis Miller as secretary general, when in fact he resigned and is no longer, in office. So all those are issues possibly we may not discuss in detail, but all I can say is that our energies and focus as a party is to have all these issues resolved amicably, so that our journey towards the conference is smooth, transparent, and no grievances at all, which may in a way create a dent to the process, allowed to go.
Governance, Elections, Advocacy and Research Services, Gears Initiative Zambia has urged the government to ensure a referendum on the expanded Bill of Rights, which include social and economic rights, is held between 2023 and 2024. Speaking during the Post-Universal Periodic Review Media Engagement meeting in Lusaka, Gears Programs Manager Gideon Musonda has cautioned that holding the referendum between 2025 and 2026 will be a replica of the failed 2016 referendum to the likelihood of politicization of the process. Ms. Msonda, however, states that the government's plan to hold a referendum on the Bill of Rights deserves commendation from all well-meaning Zambians. Details in the following report.
For instance, the much condemned Public Order Act review, according to the initial roadmap, the bill was supposed to be tabled in Parliament by 29th September 2022, but never came to fruition. So, what we have seen in the recent past is that the law now is being used on opposition leaders by overzealous police officers. For example, the recent happenings on Mr. Kamwiri's arrest and the Member of Parliament for Kasenengwa. If you had followed, this, happening, unfortunate happening in Kasenengwa, the MP Philemon, the meeting was, stopped in the name of unlawful assembly. So such happenings makes sad reading, and we should not go back to old way of administering Public Order Act. We therefore urge the government to expedite the process of repealing and replacement of all laws that infringes on people's rights to freedom of expression, assembly, and association. Review of Public Order Act and Cyber Security and Cyber Crime Act must be prioritized in the February session of Parliament. So, ladies and gentlemen, you may be aware that Parliament is resuming its sitting, I think on the 14th of February, next week. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be aware that Zambia underwent review in a process at the UN in Geneva, Switzerland. On 30th January 2023, Zambia presented its national report on the recommendations made through the third UPR cycle, which was done in 2017. We would like to urge you all to take keen interest in the UPR process. Study government's national report on progress made regarding Zambia's compliance with its international human rights obligations and progressive recommendations made by other countries.
The Zambia Police Service recorded 10,241 cases of gender-based violence (GBV) countrywide during the fourth quarter of 2022, compared to 7,920 cases recorded during the same period in 2021, an increase by 2,321 cases. In a statement, Police Deputy Public Relations Officer Danny Mwale says of the 10,241 cases recorded, 7,664 were criminal cases, whilst 2,577 were non-criminal cases. Mr. Mwale says that the 2022 fourth quarter GBV disaggregated data indicates that 2,258 child victims were abused countrywide, of which 1,636 were girls, while 622 were boys. He adds that during the same period, 6,013 women and 1,970 men were abused countrywide. Mr. Mwale states that in terms of gender vulnerability, 7,649 were women and girls, and 2,592 men and boys were abused during the period under review countrywide. He further states that the highest reports recorded countrywide were under physical violence, with 4,260 physical abuse cases, while 1,154 and 526 cases were recorded as economic and emotional abuse offences, respectively. Mr. Mwale says in the criminal case category, in terms of prevalence, Lusaka province recorded the highest GBV cases, totaling 1,884, followed by Copperbelt province with 948, Northern province recorded 777 cases, Western province had 722 cases, and Central province recorded 720 cases, while Eastern province had 657 cases. He adds that 652 cases were reported in Wapla province, while Northwestern province recorded 502 cases, Southern province 431 cases, and Muchinga province 371 cases. And Mr. Mwale says 690 GBV cases were recorded countrywide during the 2022 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, compared to 793 cases recorded during the same period in 2021, showing a decrease by 103 cases. He says 16 days of activism disaggregated data during the period under review indicates that 77 men reported GBV cases, while 409 cases were reported by women, with 48 cases affecting boys, while 156 cases affecting girls. Meanwhile, police in Zambezi district of Northwestern province are holding 5 suspects for the offense of arson. Mr. Mwale says that the suspects are alleged to have set on fire a grass-thatched kitchen valued at 950 kwacha in Nyakasumbi village in Zambezi district on February 7, 2023, around 01 hours in Mize, Zambezi West Bank. Mr. Mwale adds that the thatched kitchen belonged to a 36-year-old man identified as Samuel Nyakasumbi. The Drug Enforcement Commission, through its Anti-Money Laundering Investigation Unit, has arrested a Lusaka couple for money laundering involving 5 million kwacha. Maxwell Chungu and Rosina Mwemba Mumba have been jointly charged and arrested for forgery and uttering false documents contrary to sections 342 and 352 respectively of the Penal Code, Chapter 87 of the Laws of Zambia, fraudulent collusive practices contrary to section 74, 1 and 2 of the Public Procurement Act number 12 of 208 of the Laws of Zambia, and money laundering contrary to section 7 of the Prohibition and Prevention of Money Laundering Act number 14 of 2001 as amended by Act number 44 of 2010 of the Laws of Zambia. Particulars of the matter are that Maxwell Chungu, a businessman aged 41 years, and Rosina Mwemba Mumba, a businesswoman aged 38, both of house number 10 Sugar Street, Avondale, Lusaka, jointly and whilst acting together with other persons unknown on dates unknown, but between 1st January 2020 and 30th of November 2021, did forge two quotations for FMC Farms Limited and Simolia Trading Investments Limited bearing 7 million kwacha and 9 million kwacha respectively, which were later uttered to the Ministry of Health for the supply of 100,000 KN95 face masks. In a statement, DEC Public Relations Officer Hussein Khan says that this fraudulent and collusive practice resulted in the award of a 5 million kwacha contract to Greenside Suppliers and Investments Limited, a company in which the couple are directors and shareholders. Mr. Khan says the couple further engaged in money laundering involving the 5 million kwacha proceeds of crime and acquired, among others, one unregistered Toyota Land Cruiser. They are currently on bond and will appear in court soon. In another matter, the Commission in Lusaka has arrested 7 people for illicit drug trafficking. The Commission has jointly charged and arrested James Mwewa Makuliki, a businessman aged 46 of Chalala, Jonas Mativenga, a businessman aged 34 of John Lane, Morgan Chavula, a male aged 29 of Akanyama, for trafficking in 2,544 bottles of Benylin with codeine, cough syrup, contrary to Section 15 of the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act number 35 of 2021 of the Laws of Zambia. The Commission has since seized a green Honda CRV with registration number ABZ8344 and a multi-color Toyota Hiace panel van with registration number BAP4973 that were carrying the contraband. In another incident, the Commission has jointly charged and arrested Elizabeth Kamalon, a businesswoman aged 41 of Chilenje South, Oliver Jere, a male biochemical engineer aged 41, and Douglas Mwanza, a male taxi driver aged 30, both of Kaunda Square, and Walia Chewe, a female aged 31 years of Matero, for trafficking in 1,056 bottles of Benylin with codeine. The Commission has also seized a silver Toyota Ellen bearing registration number BLA 4980 that was carrying the consignment. The suspects were apprehended in a special operation conducted in Lusaka's Makeni area. Mr. Khan says Kamalon is believed to have been selling Benylin with codeine illegally, as a search of her house led to the discovery of a further 864 bottles. The Food Reserve Agency FRA Board has with immediate effect relieved Dr. Chola Kafuabulula of his duties as FRA Executive Director. In a brief statement, FRA Board Chairperson Kelvin Hambwezia has since announced the appointment of Mwansa Chamatete as Acting Executive Director. Mr. Hambwezia has thanked Dr. Kafuabulula for the services rendered to the agency and has since wished him the best in his future endeavors. Still in our local news, the Law Association of Zambia Laws says it's proud of the contribution which it has made to the country in the last 50 years of its existence. Speaking at the launch of the Laws Golden Jubilee Elite Marathon in Lusaka, last President Lungisani Zulu says that there have been a number of constitutional making processes that the country has undergone, and Laws have contributed immensely towards these processes. Mr. Zulu says the association is currently positioning itself to contribute more effectively going forward. He notes that society faces a number of challenges, both economic and social, which require the instrument of the law to play its role, and association is committed to do its part. Mr. Zulu states that as a way of celebrating the past and repositioning for the future, the association has resolved to hold a marathon because of the importance the association attaches to the mental well-being of society and its members.
We call upon society to come on board to celebrate with us by running on this marathon scheduled for the 25th of March 2023. I'm ready. I'm here. 42 kilometers it shall be for me. What about you? I hope you're ready, geared, but as the presenter before mentioned, there are various routes, and each one according to his capacity. We hope every one of us will find a route that we can run. And in running, we are contributing to the story of Lars and the 50. So it is my singular honor and privilege to officiate at the launch of the Lars Golden Jubilee Elite Marathon, which will take place on the 25th of March this year. Social clubs, everyone, this is not a marathon for lawyers alone, it's for all of us. So you need not be a lawyer to run, but run with us.
So the president will not find himself in a situation where the Zambian people begin to think he is traveling too much, neglecting the people who voted for him and are seeking answers to the high cost of living. He notes that there is need for President Hichilema to go back to the drawing board, as there are a lot of things that he needs to sort out before it's too late. Mr. Mumba says time is ticking and people's opinions are also being made right now. He tells Q News in an interview that the main concerns is the challenges the Zambian people are facing. Mr. Mumba notes that so many things have gone wrong in the 1 year and 5 months the UPND have been in power, and something needs to be done, especially alleviating the high cost of living.
The tendency, has always been that, the president, when he wins elections, has to make those trips to the other presidents so that he's known and so on. I think for me, the main concern is because of the challenges the Zambian people are having. And they feel he's not focusing on the domestic issues as he's focusing on the international issues. And some of those international issues, ambassadors, ministers, he can send a special envoy just to be with the people in this very difficult time. I think that's where the main issue is. And also, the people that are handling his office, they need to identify which trips does the president need to go to and which trips the president doesn't need to go to, so that the president doesn't fall in this situation where people are saying he's traveling too much. We want to know how much he has spent. He's not the first one who has signed memorandums of understandings. Previous, 6 presidents that we have signed those before. What have they culminated into, and so on. So, like I've said, there is need for him to go back to the drawing board. There is a lot of things he needs to sort out before it is too late, but time is ticking.
ZESCO employees no longer enjoy the electricity staff tariff, which allowed them to receive free electricity. This follows the abolition of the staff tariff systems. ZESCO Managing Director Victor Mapani says before the system was abolished, it was being abused, with some employees illegally connecting other people to their homes because they were receiving a lot of electricity units that they failed to exhaust on their own. He states that after 2022, no ZESCO employee gets free electricity. Instead, they buy at the same tariff every other customer buys power. Mr. Mapani has further stated that no ZESCO employee is currently having a personnel to hold a company vehicle, as ZESCO vehicles are supposed to be used to provide services to the people.
There were a lot of talks about ZESCO people getting free electricity. So electricity was given to customers, to ZESCO employees who are also customers, as a peg. So they get this free electricity and they just punch it in the meters and they will run saloons. They will do whatever they want, because it was quite a lot of units, 1,500 units it was. That has since stopped. No ZESCO employee gets free electricity. We buy our own electricity at the same tariff as everybody else. So That is a huge one. But it does two things. It empowers people to become more cautious on how they use electricity. In some unfortunate cases where people could not actually exhaust these units, what they would do then is to tell people to run saloons in their homes or in their backyards. Or indeed call friends, you have a ceremony or you have a function to conduct, come and cook at my house, I still have free units. Or indeed in some very unfortunate cases where they would actually connect neighbors because they cannot exhaust the units. That has since stopped. Every ZESCO employee now takes care of themselves. They get their electricity allowance, and we believe that electricity allowance is enough, and so they buy their own electricity. This does not include the executives. The executives are paid enough to buy the electricity from there, so the executives are not included.
Political analyst Lwendo Kaheko says that the continued trading on the streets in the central business district of Lusaka has contributed to the blockage of the drainage system. Mr. Kaheko states that it is the waste generated by those trading on the street that end up finding itself in the drainage system, thereby blocking the water passage, leading to floods. He adds that the failure by the local authority to collect garbage around the CBD leaves much to be desired. Mr. Kaheko tells Q News that it is disappointing that even after the Vice President led a cleaning exercise around the CBD, nothing has changed as the situation still remains the same. He notes that the indiscriminate dumping of garbage by those that trade around the CBD is what has made the situation worse. The Golden Party of Zambia has commended the Zambia National Service and government for offloading cheaper melamine on the market. Party President Jackson Silavwe says that this is a step in the right direction, which will cushion Zambians from buying expensive melamine on the market. Mr. Silavwe has, however, called on President Hakainde Hichilema to fully capacitate ZNS maize milling plants to ramp up production in order to meet the demand of the commodity on the market. He tells Q News that ZNS melamine can be a great determinant on the market to counter the profit-biased private milling companies. ZNS has offloaded cheaper melamine on the market at 150 kwacha for breakfast and 120 kwacha for roller meal.
As I have done numerous times, I once again call on President Hakainde Hichilema to fully capacitate the Zambia National Service maize milling plant to ramp up production. ZNS milling plant or melamine can be a great determinant on the market on behalf of our people that cannot afford the price of melamine that is determined by the private milling companies. So for us, we're saying keep it up and well done, and it is the responsibility of government to look after.
Abashike Nkulukusa anticipates a good harvest by farmers in his constituency this year. Mr. Nkulukusa says this is as a result of good rains the area has received. He states that despite the challenges faced in accessing farming inputs, the rainy pattern points to good yields compared to last farming season. Mr. Nkulukusa adds that it's hoped the entire country will remain food secure.
Flash floods, but I can rest assure you that floods are by far much better than drought when it comes to more especially crop farming at decent level, because here we are looking at food security. And we are looking at families in rural areas managing to get food for themselves. So usually between the two, we would rather choose more rain than no rain at all. And I can rest assure you that the yield is by far going to be better than last year. Of course, not to mean that there will be no damages, but still those that will be in areas that are not prone to floods will produce more maize, even when those that will be in the areas that are prone to floods will be affected. So we expect a much more increased yield this year as compared to last year. I'm a farmer myself. Last year was a disaster for me. I do a lot of planting of maize. I can rest assure you that I will do far much better this year than I did last year. So I think in terms of food security, the country will be okay, despite the destruction that would have taken place. If rains were moderate, it would have been actually the best, and we would have seen the yield that would have come. But it's rare that you have moderate things at times. It's always one end of the pendulum or the other.
The National Union of Professional Cleaners and Allied Workers has opposed the decision by government to revise the cleaning hours in day in the Central Business District to Friday of every month end from 14 hours to 17 hours. Recently, Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development Permanent Secretary Mambo Hamaundu announced that government has revised the cleaning day and hours exercise for the Central Business District from Saturday to Friday from 14 hours to 17 hours. Association President Bernard Mumba has suggested that instead of cleaning the Central Business District on Friday 14 to 17, this should be done from 20 hours to 24 hours every Friday of the month end. Former Zambia Union of Financial Institution and Allied Workers Unions UFAO President Kefas Mkuka has called on banks to take advantage of the prevailing favorable atmosphere to invest in startups. Dr. Mkuka says banks should not depend on big business people who have made it already, as this will be creating a big problem which they may end up regretting in future. Dr. Mkuka has encouraged the banks in the country to learn to lift the arms of the startups in the compounds. He says investing in startups will help banks expand and in the long run create employment as they will be forced to open new branches.
But now that the atmosphere is very conducive, and this is time now for banks that they should work on their interest rates so that they attract as many people as possible, so that they can go and borrow, so that when they borrow now, they will expand their businesses. And when businesses are expanded, it will mean that a number of people are going to be employed. And this is going to work to the advantage of the banks, because more people will be flocking to banks to go and borrow. And also, it will also reduce the unemployment levels in this country. When you are driving along Ali Kinkata Road, you see that there is a lot of innovation. There are people making window frames, door frames, gates, and so on and so forth. So those are people banks, commercial banks, are supposed to approach. They just put them in groups of 5 or 10 so that they help them with capital. Those people can expand because there is a lot of business going on around there. So they should take advantage of such opportunities. And not only there, when you're also driving to Garden and you are using Manchinchi Road or Katima Mlilo, again you see the same thing. So people are innovative, but the people are supposed to go and capture these people are not making that initiative. When banks are just going to depend on big business people who've made it already, I think they'll be creating a very serious problem which they may end up regretting in the future. They should also learn to lift the hands of these upstarts I've spoken about. The upstarts along Ali Kinkata, the upstarts along Manchinchi Road, and the upstarts also along Katimambio Road. And these are dotted across the compounds of Lusaka. They should take advantage of such. I've seen banks like Bank AB, they are trying to target marketeers, but I have not seen anyone targeting these people I've spoken about. So this can help banks to expand also, because when banks expand, they create employments. Because they'll be forced to open other branches. And when these upstarts and businesses also expand, they will be forced to employ as many people as possible. So it's a double-edged sword. And the government...
For more in international news, here is DW News.
Now, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared a national disaster, a move he says is necessary to tackle a record electricity shortage. The country is currently seeing its worst energy crisis in decades, which is stifling economic growth and disrupting public services. But opposition parties are angry at this emergency declaration. They're accusing the president of overreach.
Chaos erupts in Cape Town's City Hall. Members of the left-wing Economic Freedom Fighters Party stormed the stage where South Africa's president is about to give his annual State of the Nation address. Security, some of them heavily armed, managed to expel the opposition lawmakers. The disruption inside this chamber may have been brought under control, but ongoing disruption to South Africa's electricity supply led to President Cyril Ramaphosa declaring a national disaster.
The National Disaster Management Center has consequently classified the energy crisis and its impact as a disaster. We are therefore declaring a national state of disaster to respond to the electricity crisis and its effect.
Electricity blackouts across South Africa can last up to 12